Hello and welcome to Off Track, the Lockdown series. This evening, I'm chatting to four-times World Champion and BSCDA Chairman, Peter Falding. Peter, thank you so much for doing the interview this evening.
Hey, it's all right.
How are you doing at the moment? Is everything okay?
Yeah, to be fair, things are quiet. We're still working. We've furloughed a few people, 25, but we're still there.
Okay. It's a very strange time, isn't it? It's a very strange time for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's something that's just unprecedented, and we like certain aspects of things you can see when like have a tsunami or floods, things like that. You can see it. You can't see this. It's out there, but you can't see it.
No, it's very, very weird, very strange. Fingers crossed we'll be back racing soon anyway. So let's talk about stock cars, which is why we're here. So you started your career in 1983, and in 1986 you became world champion and the youngest driver to win the title. So looking back, do you remember much about that night? And I guess also, how was it being the holder of the gold roof at such a young age?
Well, I can remember from we never had really had much money. My dad was racing, and I went and got an Alliance tyre off John Jebson for the world final race. And when I came back home, put it on a wheel, went to the meeting and couldn't decide whether to put it on or not to put it on. And my dad was going to have the opposite to what I had. So I ended up, my dad had what I really wanted and I had what was left. And as the race set off, I got put in fence early on, and I thought, I'm going to pull off. I've had enough. And then I just thought, I'll just do a couple more laps, and then as things panned out, and the rest is history, you might say.
Yeah. And so, obviously, the youngest driver to win the world title, did that bring a lot of pressure with it at the time?
It probably does, but you don't really know at the time that your results aren't going well. The following year, I did nothing right up to the day before the world final, which was at Bradford, and the world final was at Bellevue, which is consequently the day Sam Lund was born. Wow. And that day, the Friday, the night before, was Bradford, and I won the final at Bradford, and started the world final from the back at Bellevue. I think I come six or seven, something like that, front back. And then me racing sort of kicked off from there, really.
Okay. And so you went into that world final at Coventry, your first one. Did you go into it thinking, I can win this race? Or did you have that thought?
No, I didn't. I just thought that I started on second row, and I just thought to myself, there are a lot of big people, big names around me. Dave Mellor, Stuart Smith. Then you got Freedom Walters from overseas, and there are a few big names, Mick Noden. And I just thought to myself, just do what you can. And it went wrong way to start off, and then there were a couple of incidents, and as everybody knows, Russell Joblin from New Zealand, he was out of control, he hit fence and took Stuart Smith out. And then Nigel Wharton, Frankie Waitman went out then on the back straight, and in that collision that took Nigel Wharton and left me to carry on.
Brilliant. So it's great. It's great. And 3 further world titles follow. Did any of them mean sort of more to you than the first one, I guess?
They all become special things. Once you've won it once, it's like a monkey off your back, and then you think, is it ever going to happen again? And there are a few years maybe I should have won them, and I didn't. And the next one was 93, and that was a brand new car I had for that season, and that was like a really good car. I think I won 3 finals on bounce at Coventry. I won a Grand National and an Heat at the same meet when I was all 3. So that was a good. And then 10 years later, the track was wet, and then it rained, and that was one when Murray Harrison got to me, maybe 2 laps to go, and just fended him off. And then the 2004 was fairly straightforward, really. But you look at the first one I won, and it was the first car I'd ever built myself. So that was special in its own way. The second one was with a small block, so again, they all have little things that stick in your mind as special parts within that meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned there's some world finals that you should have won. Arguably one of the greatest finishes to a world final was at Hednesford in 1991. So going for the last lap, you were in second behind Birmingham. You go for a last minute lunge, and it didn't quite pay off for you, did it?
No, that's right. I was chasing Bert all the way through the race. I played catch up. I mean, from the word go, Bobby Burns put me in on the first bend, and we never went green. So we repaired the car to the best we could. I did a complete restart. He tried to do the same again. He got me to the fence, but not as bad. And I was chasing Bert down. I think maybe in places I was quicker. He was quicker than me. And it was down to last lap. It was do or die. And I went for Bert, did what I thought were enough. And then somebody took me out from a few laps down.
Yeah, you came from a long way back as well, going down that back straight. I watched the clip in preparation sort of for today, and it was a long way back. Did you think you were going to hit him?
I actually anticipated him being a bit further around corner. I hit him harder in a side than what I expected. I expected him to be a bit further around. I thought he'd be a bit further away. I thought he'd have expected the hit, so he'd have gone in faster, but he didn't. He went in a bit slower to take the knock, but there were some cars parked in fence, which he hit with his back wheel.
Yeah, because it's very different racing then as well, because I was sort of watching the race, and there's lots of cars sort of stopped against the fence, which you don't kind of see anymore, do you, for obviously safety reasons. So yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned John Lund. There was that incredible period in the sport when you and John were vying for the national points title, 80 plus meetings a season, four times racing a weekend. What was it like in that period?
It was very good fun. I mean, back then, Andrew Smith were only a young lad at school, and he used to come and help me, and people like that, a few other people that used to help me, and without them, not having commitments to anything else, you need them to keep the car going and travelling the country. And yeah, we had some good battles, but they never actually spilled over.
Yeah. When I spoke to Ryan last week, he said that when he won the silver roof in the shootout in 2013, he found it really hard, mentally draining, just because of the time and effort you had to put in. But when you did it over a full season, it must have been, an incredible amount of effort on your part.
Yeah. I mean, 88, 89, you did a lot of meetings, and 90 had a bit of a break. I didn't do as many meetings. You're a little bit down. You come second, so close but so far. Well, that's what makes it special, the title, that it's not that easy to win.
No, absolutely. So kind of like with John, obviously great rivals on track, but what was your relationship like off track? I mean, we do see that, top drivers in the sport aren't the best of friends, but how are you and John off track? Yeah,
we're fine. I mean, when we used to go to Holland and that racing, Barlow, and or if we went to Ghent, we'd book and we'd all end up going together, stay at Soham Hotel, never no problems. But same with New Zealand, even as latter with Johnny's wife and two girls, and me was at Jordan. When we've been there, we've stayed same places. We've never had cross words. It's as though we've been arch rivals on track, but off track, we just don't speak about them moments. And we've never, it's one of them out of respect. If you haven't got anything nice to say, just stay away, don't say nothing. Because you usually end up regretting saying something, and it also spills over. Yeah. It must have been very difficult, though. You can have to sit John in the fence in a race, and then you see him off track at the end of the meeting. It's quite difficult, isn't it, I suppose, in some respect? Yeah. I mean, he was always a bit cleverer than me. He was older and wiser. And I can remember in 89, when it got to the last weekend, we were close in points, and there was money going right through to second. And we'd agreed earlier on in season to share it. If it went that close to both of us getting it, we'll share the money. And we were at Scunthorpe, lined up together, because obviously the promoter put us both in the same heat. And I'd made my mind up that I was going to bury him. And I got my blinkers on, and I'm just sat there waiting. And he's then trying to get me attention. I hear something, so I turned away. And he says, "Are we still sharing money whichever way it goes?" I thought, how can I bury him when he's offering to give me £1,000 of the sharings? So I didn't, but he was clever enough to let me go and follow me. He didn't need to beat me. And I think I won the second final, but that was still close. But then come the Sunday, it went to the last meet. It went to the last race of the last meeting, and he just kept me far enough away, but in front of him, far enough away, so he didn't have to deal with anything either way. You know, he got the upper hand. I'd got to beat him, but convincingly in the races, and it just wasn't to be.
And did you share the money? Did it ever get shared out?
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, we did. So it and it was same as, I mean, during that season, you can turn around and say I had battles with the Pierces. You know, there were Rob Pierce and his two brothers, and I had a bit of a set to with them. But then John did with Russell Taylor. You know, so we both had ones that, you know, you could blame things that's happened during the season. Well, it's down to your own, isn't it? You make you look.
Absolutely. But an incredible time. Clearly, you very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You also had great success over in Holland at the long track in Barlow. You won the Dutch World title 3 times. Was it more challenging winning in Holland than in the UK?
It was just my disappointment in first time I won was Ennisford. I built a brand new car to go to the Ennisford World Final, and I never used it. We'd just gone on to Hoosiers, and I built the car, and my dad had qualified for the World Final, and I just had a new engine, but they weren't together. The new engine was in the old car that I'd been racing, and my old engine was in the new car. So the packages weren't quite right, but I knew the old car, and I thought the big engine in the old car would be the way to go, but turned out it wasn't. The other car was quicker, and then when it come to go into Holland 2 weeks later, because then Holland was after the World Final, not before.
Yep.
And I put my big engine into that car and took that car, and it was so quick that, well, I won all 4 races, and yeah, that were good results.
Yeah. It's a very fast track. You know, what was it like racing at those speeds?
Thing is, you will always, when you race, you will always race to your limit. Now, if that limit is 60 mile an hour and 65 you're going to crash, you'll be 61, 62. So even if it's, I mean, they say you're averaging 99 mile an hour. How true it is, I don't know, but, you know, maybe 120 down the straights. But what you've got to remember is you're in a Morris minor van, FG van, aren't you? You've got all LD axles, and they're bouncing up and down because of balance. And once you get to about 80, 90 mile an hour, it all comes smooth and you're away. But when you slow down to stop, it comes back through again, all the vibration. I mean, like you in your road car get maybe 50, 60 mile an hour, a bit of wheel wobble. You can imagine what wheels were like back then, what we made for racing. Yeah.
And in terms of your driving style, did you alter it much for the Barlow long track? Or is it similar?
I wouldn't have said you did really. Similar kind of line. They were just longer straight. The only thing that you had to do is you had to pick something, a marker for your braking point. That was the only thing I found difficult, because of the length of the straight, you had to pick something that you tried to use as a braking point. And if it wasn't right, you could go further, then pick something else. But yeah, but like back then, like you're on about with Lundy and that, we used to hire push bikes on the Saturday, because you only raced on the Sunday. Yeah. We'd hire push bikes and go round. We'd go from the centre of Venlo to Barlow track and go around the track on push bikes, and then have a beer at the track, and then have a beer in every bar back to town and drop us bikes off before we raced. You know, so we were always together, even back then.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It sounds brilliant. And so you have had an incredibly successful career in Bristol F1. You know, you've won all of the sport's major titles. Is there one that really stands out? You know, it meant the most to you?
No, I don't think there is really. I mean, I won national points in '93, but I also won the world. So I think that was a good year. I mean, you look at world titles and people turn around and say, for example, '86, you was given it. Yeah, I were, but I'll take it. '93, I deserved to win it. So everything I did right. I mean, I had an attack from Lundy and I had to ride that. I dropped back to third. A couple other people took lead. Nigel Wharton, I had to deal with him. And then Ian Platts. So it was a busy race. And then, like I say, in the 2003, I was at right place, right time. And 2004 was very similar. So all your championships that you've won, you know, there's certain parts of them. I can remember one European at Skegness. Again, it was last bend on Nigel Wharton. The car, Des Chandler spun going into turn 3. And Nigel Wharton went the outside to miss him. And I went the inside. And if I'd have missed him, I'd have ended up in Boston. But I made contact and picked a marker tyre up, just spit it out before finish line. So it's, you know, certain things in certain big races stick in your mind years to come.
Did you ever get nervous? Did you ever sort of think, oh, I'm a bit concerned about this one?
Every time I went in a world final, I'd set off on rolling lap and my foot used to be shaking, but more adrenaline. But as soon as you started going down back straight, drop top gear, you know, I were away then. You know, it didn't bother me. But whether it be nerves, adrenaline, whatever you want to call it, I always used to feel something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's been some brilliant highlights, and I guess some lowlights as well. One of them may have been at the '92 Bradford World Final. So you hadn't qualified for the World Final through the traditional British route. You were seeded onto the grid because you won the long track over in Holland, third on the night, and I can remember the crowd weren't overly impressed, I guess. You know, looking back, was it the right decision to take your place on the grid?
Well, you can look at it two ways with that one, because back then, whoever won the long track started row 3 inside, you know, so there was nothing wrote to say if he's English, he can't, or anything else. He's got to be Dutch to start there. I mean, as we come nearer to now, Gary Castells won the Gold Cup, and he started row 3 for the World Final at Kings Lynn. But I don't think the start of it was the issue. The fact I came third was the problem. Yeah. Nobody seemed to have a problem with me doing it. It was after, you know, because I came third, that was the problem, which I can understand. Somebody who were fourth would have been third. And, you know, it was Derek Fairhurst. So the only thing with Derek was that I repaid him the favour and told him not to go in the Skegness one.
You did?
So
yes.
Leeds, I said, we're square, you know, so I think he's half forgiven me. I said, you've no chance of winning, Derek, but Lee's a chance. So they just made sure that it were true what I was saying, and they went in it. So you can look at that World Final and say, why did he go in it? Only thing that Derek had got a problem with was it wouldn't start. But to be fair, you saw the Skeggy World Final. If you're going into a World Final with a car that don't start, unless you're up near front, mid-piked at back, I wouldn't entertain it.
No. So great advice. So I guess looking back on that Bradford one, it's one of them, isn't it? It probably was the right decision.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of them that has a mixed. Even today, people talk about it mixed, whether it shouldn't have happened, you know. And it was probably one of them that I thought best not go in it bar that night. And when we'd finished meeting, we went home. But you know, as you say about people being disgruntled and that, you know, when you go on a rolling lap at a World Final, the fans and everything that's there, the atmosphere is unbelievable. You know, I've raced circuit cars, won championships, and the atmosphere is nothing like a World Final. It's unbelievable.
Quite a few people that I've chatted to have said that one of the main attractions for them about Formula One is the crowd and the reaction that you get, certainly on the big stages, and clearly it was a big thing for you as well. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I've been around it all my life, so you know, even back to Dougie Cronshaw racing, Stuart Smith, Chizzy, Willie Harrison, all them. You know, they were the people ahead of my time. Most of them was either finished or nearly finished when I started. So you know, then we've got the next era, and now your third generation. You know, you've got Jordan's had a go, Bradley, JJ, you know, and so does, you know, they've all the family history of your third generation drivers are coming out. It's it's just one of them things. It just makes you feel old for the length of time you've done it. You know, but people said to me, now I'm 54, and people say, well, I didn't start while I was 40. I said, yeah, well, I started when I was 16, 17. So, you know, I've had a long time at it. And how long do you keep going at something?
Ask John Lund. Don't know. We'll ask John Lund one day.
That's right. I mean, you'll do it until the time comes when you feel as though you've had enough. You know, it's, you know, it's a way of life. It becomes a way of life for you. And it's, if you haven't got other things that you do, you know, and you end up following your children. I mean, for example, look, Andrew, with his daughters, they're into racing. So there's some form of that. It's going to carry on in short oval sport. Yeah. You know, it's not as though they're into horses or things like that. So, or dancing, you know, it's a road you go down, and it's a mega family. I mean, you've been around it a long time yourself, your dad, and it's one of them families that, you know, it's there for you. You don't always agree with everything that they say, but you acknowledge the fact that we disagree. You know, it's just one of them and move on.
Yeah, it is an incredible sport. It is. You're quite right. So slightly off topic, Rotherham is quite a hotbed and surrounding area for stock car drivers. Do you ever get recognised in the street?
I have been places, but not necessarily Rotherham. You know, when we've been karting, when I packed in racing, Jordan were doing go-karts, and we used to go all over the country, and again, people from racing who their kids were racing, and you recognise people and chatting to people all over the country. But you do get recognised by certain people, but there's other people that see you and they don't speak to you.
Well, don't want to or don't?
Well, either. Could be either. They could be John Lund fans in that case. They don't want to speak to me. Not that they don't.
They could. So going back to the beginning, you had a successful career in mini stocks and you followed your dad's footsteps into Formula One. Was that something you wanted to do or you were expected to do?
Yeah, I wanted to do it. My dad never had the money to do it. My dad just worked just as a normal 8 till 5 o'clock job. Well, he worked for Willie Harrison early on as a mechanic on their trucks, looking after Willie's stock car and doing his own to be able to fund his own racing. And then he went to work for Booths, and he carried on racing, but just on a shoestring. And then when I came on the scene, you know, for racing, I've always wanted to do it with minis. I didn't race my last year because we didn't have that kind of money, and it would save up to have a Formula One. And my dad had a new one, and I had his old one for a few meetings, and then he blew his up, so he had it back, and then decided to build the new car that I had, which was that actually turned out in 1984 World Final. I didn't qualify, and it had a new engine in it, and then after my dad raced it in the World Final, and I raced it the rest of the season, and then went on in '85 to go from blue to superstar and continue.
Yeah. Okay. So from the outset, you've always built your own cars. So which one was your favourite or your best?
I always liked the one that I made for Holland. I always liked that, and the first year I raced it, and then when I came home, I took the engine out of it and parked it in a corner and never touched it. And then when it come round to Holland again, I took the engine out of my car I was using, put it back into that car and took it and won it again. And then the third year, Peter Carter, I built a brand new car for him. Peter Carter bought me a small block to go in it. So I had that car, and Andy Webb, he raced my car, the one that had won both 88, 89, he raced it, and maybe with hindsight, I'd been better off with a big block then than the small block because just had the torque and the horsepower. And then in '92, when I won the long track in '92, we went the meeting before, and Crunder won every race, wet and dry. He just wasn't. I was nowhere near him, and we were in the bar. Andy Hodgson was there, and Cecil, they were helping me at the time, and we were talking to Crunder and that bar, and I bet him £100 that I'd win long track, and my dad said, "Why do I do stupid things when I've had a drink?" And I said, he said, "The only chance you've got of winning that is if you built a new car." I said, "Well, I'll have to do that." So that's what I did. We came home and I built a new car, and we never tried it anywhere. We took it to Barlow and went out in practice, and clutch was slipping. So I took the clutch out and raced with no clutch. I just put the plates in and no pedal. And it rained. I didn't even have no spare wheels for the car because they're a little bit different. So I went out with dry tyres on, and it was like the fastest thing out there. You couldn't see for spray, but it was certain things were forced upon me to do, not through choice.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a memorable car to have had.
Absolutely. Brilliant. That's a great story. Thank you for that. So in terms of building cars, the rule book's quite strict when it comes to car construction, but was there one innovation that you made that you were particularly proud of?
But probably the thing that nobody realised, well, not a lot of young ones realise, and that I was the innovator in, was a shale wing, the sloping one.
Okay.
I had one of them back in '88, I think it was, and it got banned, and then I changed it a little bit, put a curve on the front, and then I think that a few other people started having them, and they just left everybody, and then people just lowered them a bit, and then we're to where we are now with the tailor-made ones that, well, now Tom does.
So you were the first one to introduce the sloping wing on a shell.
And I think maybe I don't know exactly, but I was probably the first one to run a front wing as well.
Okay.
Which was on that '92 car.
So why did it get banned? Why was it banned in the first place?
Well, it said, the rule book said it had got to be no more than 12-inch across its leading edge. But it didn't say the front. So I said the leading edge was the side. So then the rule book clarified the leading edge is the front. So then I put a curve on the front of it. So it was only 6-inch front roof. So it was within the distance. And then I get like the frustration of some of these new drivers that do things like Nigel Green and Tom, people like that are trying new things. I mean, I suppose with being chairman at BSCDA now, I'm like poacher come gamekeeper. You know, I've done all the things and I get, but you've got to take it on chin when you're trying all these things. You do them secretive, and then when it comes out, they used to change the rules. I've had cars banned for different things, engine too low, too much offset, you name it, I've had it banned. But what you have to do is like, oh, well, I'll come back and I'll make it even faster within what you're saying. And that's what you used to do. And that's what Tom and Nigel Green will do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. In terms of cars, they're still being built at the Falding workshop. Bobby Griffin is currently racing the latest Falding tarmac creation. So how did that sort of deal come about? And have you built any cars over the winter?
Well, I've been doing a bit because I thought if I'm going to get locked down, I may as well stay at work and do my time there. You know, but it never really happened. I went and had a roll cage bent and bits and pieces. So I've been doing bits. I'm always doing something. Never really have anybody in mind, and just do it. And then when I get near to end, word gets about, and somebody usually comes on for one. Okay.
And then, so the one that Bobby's racing, was that one that you built yourself?
Yeah,
recently?
That was me and Jordan did that. Well, we've done that one, and we've been doing this other one. But we did that, and Jordan was looking at going to race again, and Bob, he became friends through work. You know, he was doing some work for the company that Jordan works for, and he asked him if he wanted to have a go in it, and he did, and then that went from there, really. So he did one meeting, did well, then so it just continued doing the tarmac meetings. But I think that the first of all was he raced my car in Holland. I think he went to Holland before it and raced that. And then when we built this new car, he was, you could say, the person that he didn't want to go in it, Jordan, at that time. So Bob was the one, because he was racing the other one. I think that's how it all come about.
And we really helped him out, certainly, back in last year with the shootout, didn't it? So he's kind of really
I think he's going to be a driver for the future. I mean, nothing seems to faze him. You know, you hear all the years say that Tom's gonna bury him and this, that, and other. But if he does, he'll get him back. You know, he's a kind of driver that I like, that because he lets his racing do his talking. You know, you don't always make the right decision when you're on track. You make some mistakes, but it's whether you learn from your mistakes and progress. You know, I think there seems to be far too much bitching going on amongst drivers, and I don't think the internet and all this book face and all that helps. I think that people are saying stuff and it misinterpreted, and he said, she said, whereas, you know, I've said to certain drivers before, I've said, if you've got a problem, ask that person instead of going through what everybody else is telling you, because most of the time they're just stirring it, you know. And yes, it makes for a bit of reading at night, but it's not necessarily the truth and gets thrown out of proportion. Yeah. And then your dad has to deal with it in his office.
It does. It does. It keeps you in a bit of a job, though, doesn't it? So you were saying about the internet. It does have its downsides, but also there is some positives, isn't it? And certainly over the winter, what we've been doing to try and keep people engaged is quite good. So it's kind of it's less of two evils, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. I suppose if it's a modern day tool, then you've got to use it to your advantage. And like now, you would say that it's been a good thing for people watching the race, the e-racing, whatever you want to call it, on a Saturday night, and it's people looking forward to it. You know, it's. I mean, the other side of that is, you know, I've been thinking, you know, whether when this lockdown comes to an end, if they're going to limit it to crowds, that it wouldn't be viable. You know, I wonder whether we could do something. I mean, in New Zealand, they do it through Speedbox, you know, and so there's people filming, and it goes out virtually live, a few minutes, which I don't understand all that, but you know, if we could do something like that, maybe get the viewers pay to view kind of thing. You know, it's something worth looking at, dependent on the promoters wanting it or whether they just want to carry on and sit it out. Because I can't see them wanting to have a meeting, because realistically, 500 people is going to be your drivers and mechanics, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
You know, and your staff.
Do you think that's an option? Yeah. Do you think there needs to be an option potentially? Because
I see it as a stepping stone. It's the only way that we could maybe continue, because there's no point having it behind closed doors if it's not going to be televised.
Yeah.
You know, people are just going out there and nobody can watch it. It's a spectator. I mean, our sport has always thrived on three elements. One is a track, two is a driver, and most important is the crowd. No crowd, you don't get the other two. But then again, if you've got no drivers, you'll not get a crowd, and there's no point having a track. So all three are as important parts to the equation. So I see that moving forward, that's maybe a possibility for like a pay-to-view kind of thing.
Do you think the drivers will be up for that then, if there was an option towards the back end of the year?
I don't know. I mean, obviously there's some detail to it, but it's maybe an option that's worth debating. Again, who knows whether we can get some meetings underway. You know, I think for me, the championships, for me, as we are now, if we get some meetings underway, they'd just be as meetings. And I can't realistically see anything happening until, say, August at the earliest. I realistically think September. And then for me, we should basically, 2020 didn't happen. And what we've got set out for 2020 goes into 2021, you know, and we're just basically as though you've been asleep for 12 months. Yeah. So I think that if you try and run some lads that's won championships, it's not fair on. And also it's just one of them that you could be depriving punters are going to a big meeting because it's the third meeting that's going to come up. So I can't see any of the championships happening. If I'm being realistic, I'd love for them to happen, but I can't really see it.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, if you've got a few meetings at the back end, maybe, but yeah, and start all over again next year. It absolutely makes sense. Thank you.
It's like if you looked at some tracks you could go to, they're prime for having a meeting and televising. So, you know, I think that there is a few things that you could do, but it's all obviously again depends on cost, doesn't it? Because somebody has got to pay for the filming, and then you've got to have your fingers crossed that people are going to pay to view it.
Yeah. I think though, maybe if we'd have said this time last year, tell her, we're going to put stock cars on and we're going to do pay per view, people are like, no, I'm not doing that. But I think such a lot's changed that actually, it may work now.
That's right. I mean, it's same as you look at people that's on lockdown that's been furloughed. For example, if you take a lorry driver, let's say he got £500 a week, he's getting £400 a week to stay at home, and he might live 15 mile away from where he works. So if he's got to go home and back every day, he's actually in pocket being only on 80% because he's got no travel because he's at home, and he's got no food to buy at services at that kind of money. So he's going to probably, in actual physical money, he's going to be better off. So there may be people that's as well off now, that can go straight out and do things, because there's been schemes for mortgages and things like that to basically have an holiday period. So a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, because there's always certain people that slip the net on whatever happens. And I think that, we should be able to come back, and basically everybody's life is just 3 months behind kind of thing.
Yeah, makes sense. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Going back a little bit, the name CF Booth has always been intrinsically linked with your racing career. So how did that relationship come about?
Well, my dad went to work for them in 1968, 69, something like that, and he kept his car there. And when I got to be 14, 15, I used to go down there and wash lorries and things like that. And when I became 16, that started working there. And when I built that new car, I asked him if they'd be interested in sponsoring me. The father, that's the big boss man. It wasn't him; it was one of his sons. I asked, but I was grateful anyway to let me keep my car there. So that alone is worth having. And I asked if he'd go halves with me on an engine, and he asked me if it'd win. And I said, well, you win now and again. And he just said, that's not good enough. He says, I want one that's going to win all the time. So we ended up winning Brian Powell's and buying what was going to be, well, who's got the best engine? He said, Stuart Smith. And he said, well, I want one better than that. And that's supposedly what I had to start with, which won me my first world final. So that's how it started. And then I've just been there ever since, and they've helped me all through, right up to even now. Yeah.
So it's brilliant. You're clearly very fortunate, do you know what I mean, to have such a great support behind you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a twofold thing, because if anything happened to a truck and it's at night, I'm there, doing my stock car. So you have to change a wheel on a truck. It's part of job, really. So it works both ways.
Brilliant. A bit of a difficult question for you. So looking back at your time as a stock car driver, how do you think you were perceived by fans and fellow drivers?
I don't know. I think a lot of people like my racing style, and a lot of people that didn't. So the acknowledgement, whether they liked me or hated me, the acknowledgement is good for the sport. And as if you can't like everybody, can you?
No.
That's the way I look at it. If they do like me, then fair enough. If they don't like me, then there's not a lot I can do about it. It's just how it is. It doesn't upset me. If somebody don't like me, it's part of life, isn't it? You can think to yourself, well, how can I make that change for him to? I mean, it's perception. People perceive you to be something. And maybe now I'm different to what I were when I raced. Yeah. It's. I always remember like old Stuart Smith. You'd speak to him when you're having a beer and everything else, and he was great. But if he was racing, he spoke, and he'd sometimes ignore you, but not because he was ignorant. And I think it's because he's perceived to be, because he's thinking about what he's going to do next. Racing. So you're not. You can hear a noise, but you're concentrating on what you want to do. And any of your top drivers will tell you that's if they do their own car, that they're thinking of ways of making it better, or the strategy and how they're going to plan the next race kind of thing. So I think that sometimes the perception, but yeah, you can catch somebody and say hello to them and they don't answer you, and on another day they won't stop talking to you, and you think, that's a different person. but it's not. It's just because maybe the mind's elsewhere on something they're doing.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a good answer. Thank you. Aside from stock cars, you also raced Ascot 2004, 2006. Did you enjoy it? And did you want to do more kind of circuit style racing?
Yeah, I went. I did Eurocar racing, which was I did that in 1995, which came out at Blue again. Somebody who I perceived didn't really like me, which was Tim Mann, and he was on for buying a car, and I was in New Zealand. And when I came home, I got a message to ring him, and he wanted to meet me at Wetherby. So I came home and I went to meet him, and it got snowed off, so we never met. And then a couple of days later, he came to Rotherham to see me and asked me if I were interested in driving a Eurocar, which I didn't even know what they were. And I says, well, I just need to know a bit more. And we went down to the place, and he bought the car, and I raced that. And Jeff Alderson, Mick, another chap used to race, Jeff Parker, they used to help, Simon Sargent, they all helped out with it. And we went and raced Eurocar for a couple of seasons. And the first meeting I went to, I thought, what am I doing? I thought I was going as fast as I could. And Barry Lee, people like that were coming round me as though I was stood still. I thought, this isn't for me. Yeah. And after a couple of meetings, I got up to speed, and I was as quick as they were. So I started having race wins and things like that. And then in 97, I bought the car off Tim, raced in 97 and 98, won a championship in 98, and then had a go at V8s, which I didn't really get on with. Went back to V6, then came back to stock car.
Yeah. So it's very, it sounds like a very, go on, sorry.
5 years probably.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So did you want to do a bit more as well, or was it actually, so why did you come back to stock car?
Stock, when you race them circuit things and it's like, oh, how do you feel? You might win. When you go into a corner and you see somebody right on your bumper, just go a bit slower, because if they hit you, they only can rub you, so they can't do nothing to you. Whereas in a stock car, when you see somebody coming, you cringe a bit because you know what's coming. It's just totally different racing. Yeah. And you're better off being the intimidator than being intimidated. I used to get into trouble racing circuit car, because people always used to be hitting me, and I never had no front end damage, but I wouldn't give in. They thought you'd move out of the way, and you won't. And I said, look, my two front doors and front of car, if I've damaged that, then that's down to me. If it's back doors, back end, that's not down to me. That's whoever's hit me. And that's how I used to play.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you are currently chairman of the BSCDA. Why did you decide to take on that role?
Well, there's a few things that happened, and it was, I felt as though, we was going a little bit stale on, and I think that when you're racing, Neil Scudden did a good job. He was racing, which then took all his time, so he couldn't race. And I just thought that, I've been there, and maybe you don't know, but back in 93, 94, I was chairman.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know
so that. I was like chairman. Then after, I think, Ian Higgins, then Gaz Bott all the way around, and then I was chairman for a while, and then Stuart Mills was chairman after me.
Right, okay.
And then, then it's come back to Neil Scudden, Flan, then back to myself. But I just felt that, I felt as though it looked to me like it was heading in the wrong direction. And I just thought that we needed to keep everybody together. And we've got such a good sport with drivers and fans and everything else that it was, I felt as though it was maybe dissolving itself a little bit. And I thought if I can help it, then I would. And then the same with when they go to the voting, I prefer to have the vote than just be put back on because nobody else wants to do it. Because when you have a vote, you see whether the drivers that's voting and the associate members whether they want you to be on. And on the results that we got, I feel as though they must think I'm doing all right because of the votes I got, or they felt that there was nobody wanted to do it that's better. So I don't know, but that's the way I see it. The amount of people that wanted me to do it, that speaks its own without somebody having to come and tell you, because they voted for you. So that's why I've done it, and I could do with somebody else. Maybe the next year is in likes of Bradley and people like that to come on. Bradley's on there already. Some more young ones and get them, into the way of everything works, and then for them to take over, and hopefully can leave the sport in a good way for them to continue.
Yeah, makes sense. Like the legacy piece, absolutely.
That's
so
right,
in terms of the role, what's the most challenging aspect of being chairman?
Well, one of the biggest roles, the hardest bits is promoters. When it comes to negotiating and things like that, it's always it's always like a cat and mouse kind of game. It's like promoters don't want to speak sometimes, and then another time they do. They think that the drivers want too much, but we're for Formula One stock cars. And I get the promoters are a business. We're not a business. They're a business, and we're only interested realistically in Formula One. I know they've got other things going on at the tracks, so I get the reasons they have theirs, but we have our reasons as well. And the last thing I'd like to do is to see our sport go down the road like others, where they're paying to race and everything else. We're unique at minute, and I think we need to try and preserve that and keep that going. Once you get on that slope, then I think the numbers dwindle. It doesn't become a spectacle as much because you haven't got the ingredients.
So you mentioned pay to race. Do you think that's going to happen at any time soon, or do you think that start money is integral to Formula One?
I think it's integral, and I think you would lose a lot of drivers, and people seem to think that, it's a principle thing that the money is paid as start money. It's been paid all these years, and there's a lot of people that rely on that to go and race the next day if that's what's happening. It's such an expensive game, Formula One. And it's everybody says, oh, it's a working man's sport. It's a working man's dream, not a sport. It's a dream that you want to do, but it's so expensive. It's an hard one to say.
Yeah.
What should happen, and that's what I used to tell people with circuit racing. You go circuit racing, your actual travel cost is the same because you've got a vehicle to take your car, but instead of paying an entry fee, you paid to race. So, people said to me, well, it's only £40 you get. I said, yeah, but you're paying 200. So to me, that's £240 difference. Well, how'd you work that? I said, well, because you're paying 200, not getting 40.
Yeah.
And that's where circuit boys are, and they're happy to do two races. But that's their culture, not ours. Yeah. That's what makes us unique, and we're probably one of the big draw cards for crowds as well. You look at a lot of circuit stuff and it doesn't get a crowd. I mean, touring cars maybe gets a little bit, but they have a lot on their package with other things that's paying to race.
So if there was one thing that you could bring in, one rule you could bring in unopposed, that you think would make the sport better, what would that be?
Well, I think that maybe, if the problem with dates and things like that, which again I get of promoters, and a bit more freer for dates for racing instead of being a closed shop. You've got 5 promoters, and I understand that they own their dates, but that doesn't help the sport. If you've got to pay somebody to have a date, that's already eating away at what you would make from your venue. So I think that, they maybe need something to free up so dates, or whether the drivers looked after themselves and sold themselves to a stadium to race.
Okay. That's good. I like that. And if you were to mark the health of the sport over the years, 2020, 2010 and 2000. What mark would you give to each?
Well, I would think as a steady progression. I mean, we had it. The numbers wasn't good for around 2000, but the racing was exceptional. You got meetings with 17 cars at certain tracks, but you'd got Speaky, Young Frank, and Andrew Smith knocking 7 bells out of each other. So as a spectacle, it was really good to watch. But so it depends on how you see class the health, whether it's on numbers or actual good racing. Yeah. You know, so back then, I think the numbers racing has increased to 2010, and we can't speak for 2020, but 2019 the numbers were good, and I think with how they've done the shootout the series, that's made it very spectacle for the end of the season, because back then from World Final onwards it was a bit of a can't wait for the season to end. Now everybody's looking forward to it. So I think that it has got better and it's more competitive. Whether you agree that the Silver Roof is won over 10 or 12 races, you know, it's another story. You know, whether you see it as an all long like it used to be, but I would think that there'd not be many people that run for it. So you could take it as a given. Whoever does all the meetings would have the Silver Roof. So it's could you call it a championship? It maybe just be a well done. You've done all meetings and got the most points.
Is that how you see it? Do you think the shootout is a better way of deciding the Silver Roof?
I do, yeah. I think it's how it's done now. I mean, we have had to refine it a few times. For example, we had 10 drivers, and I think it was Paul Hines, Louis Engine, and Matt Newson broke his leg, or other way around. So it dropped us to 8. Luke was only doing tarmac. So it made it, there were like seven cars in it. So, and your second half was already determined by the first. Now you can change, you can move top 6. So your points are still important to you. If you were 6, you can say, I can only stay 6. Whereas now you can still make 1. And also there is a lot of damage that gets involved in it, but they are getting a bit more start money as they get nearer to the final. So I think it's been a good thing that's been introduced, and maybe knows a little bit of refining to move further forward as times change. Who knows? But at the minute, I think it's working.
Yeah. There is that debate around the shootout, around whether we should ask drivers to commit to the 10 rounds. Do you think that's something we should do, or do you think actually it's their choice whether they do?
The only problem with that, what you're going to do if they don't?
Yeah.
That's for me, it's not a policeable thing. If you say that I'm not, and I don't think it wants diluting by dropping it down the grades where you could have a blue top, no disrespect to the blue top, but you know, you're dropping it down into grades and then they're going to start getting knocked about and maybe not want to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that if there's people that only race tarmac or only race shale, then, you know, they've got to the shootout by only doing them meetings. So they should still be entitled to do the bit. I mean, it's only like a driver having a fallout with a promoter and not going to his track, isn't it? You know, it'd still be missing, and that's a personal thing. It's not necessarily because I don't like shale or tarmac.
Yeah. If you could bring back any track we no longer race at, or have a brand new track for the 2021 season, what would you do?
I think it's a bit of a twofold thing. I mean, as far as tracks go, Coventry is the home of Formula One, you know, and it will be probably for the next few years until it's out of people's memory. Back when I was younger, it used to be the old Bellevue, and Coventry to me then was the second tier to it. And then Bradford came on scene. Bradford was an unbelievable track to race at, you know, a really good fast track. Coventry was a little bit harder, but Coventry was like the home, you might say. So to be between Coventry and Bradford, you know, and I suppose realistically there's a possibility of either coming back.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And, you know, as a new venue, there's some stadiums not so far from us that's that could be made into something. But who knows what this kind of thing changes things, doesn't it? Changes people's plans and perspectives on things.
I won't push you on what you reference, but that rumour's been about, hasn't it? There's a stadium kind of sitting there, and it's been looked at. And
in fact, they've been cutting grass today.
Have they? Yeah. So no spoilers. Should we stop there? So for the last few years, during the winter, you've headed off to New Zealand and headed up Team GB with Guy Parker. Anything you think you do differently to kind of get that championship win when you're out there? The biggest,
it's like David and Goliath, really, I feel, is the biggest problem that we have is funding. We're really grateful to the people in England who, apart from, like in our sport, don't get no commercial gains from the sponsorship that they give. And it helps towards it. But it's so expensive to rent good cars, to get the drivers out there, flights, things like that, accommodation. It's just so expensive. So everything's diluted. I mean, it really could do with, I don't know how you'd do it. It's some kind of crowdfunding kind of thing to be able to give it a best shot. I mean, since we've been doing it, they've upped the game as well in New Zealand. We had a couple of close ones, couple of seconds, and I think that they've upped their game, a lot of them now, not just odd one or two. There's a lot that's upped the game. I mean, you look, all the cars are the same colours now in livery, which we did first. Drivers are starting, they're not all there yet, but we're in the same race suit, things like that we've done to try and make us more professional. But the other thing is we're reliant on people in New Zealand helping us, yes, like Scotty Myers and Puck and Bruce that have the track. There's other people, Rob Linton and Clint Hill, people like that. And there's other people that's helped us in past. Peter Rees has helped us. And, there's a lot of people that's helped us over the years, just in work, and we're grateful for it. But that don't help you by the next step. It's a difficult one. I mean, me and Stuart Smith were talking about it this year, what we'd have to do. And we sat down and we had a couple of bottles of rum, and we was talking of maybe me, John Lund, Andrew, and Stuart doing it.
Okay.
And Frankie Wayman. So, yeah. But then when you sober up next morning, it's not a reality. But yeah, it's you need to take the drivers that go out. You're asking a lot of them, and a lot of people say it's a closed shop, but you need to get some continuity in drivers to go out there so they can read the racing. When you get a driver out there, sometimes they come straight up to speed. I mean, for example, you've got Bobby Griffin. He's been he's raced it, I think, 3 times, and is getting a lot better out there. JJ, he is, it's like because they're out there a few times, but then people say, it's a closed shop, you can't get it. You can, but can you commit yourself for 3 weekends of racing in New Zealand? And not a lot of people can. So it's a massive ask of the drivers to do it. And, you'd love to people say, why haven't you picked the best drivers from England? Because they don't want to go. You have the commitment. You have a family, last thing your wife wants to do is go racing for an holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, it's, I understand all that. So it's a fair commitment that you've got to put in, and the money that if you're a self-employed person, the money it costs you, for example, Lee Fairhurst, Lee had a year off this time because he was building a car for somebody, so you're not there. You're losing a lot of money from not being there. You've still got your overheads. If you've got a mortgage, you've still got it to pay. So it is very expensive. And other than a cash injection, I don't see realistically, unless Lady Luck's going to be really good to us.
I reckon the idea you and Stuart had was the best. Try that one.
But they breathalyze you before you race, so you might not go on track.
So keeping it topical, if you had to self-isolate with 3 current or former Formula 1 drivers, who would you choose?
What's in the isolation though? Is the beer or food or what? Or have you got to live off the land kind of thing?
Okay, let's think about this. So you're self-isolating in a nice house, food and everything else provided for you. All you got to do is sit, eat and drink. So you can choose 3 drivers from here.
I would probably go like Stuart. Stuart's a good one. You know, young Stuart's. We spent a fair bit of time together, New Zealand and that, and had some laughs. You know, maybe Jamie Davidson. He likes to drink. He used to race.
Good.
Likes to eat, and he's not like a keep fit fanatic yet. So, yeah, I think some. Who else would you go with then?
So far you've
maybe Bobby Griffin.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can teach him our tricks.
Okay. So you've pretty much based it on people that like to eat and drink. I like that. So it's a good.
It's like we're all anorexic people.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's the camera angle. It's just the camera angle. That's all it is. If you had to pick your 3 top drivers of all time, who would they be?
Old Stuart Smith would definitely be the one that I inspired to be, and would maybe go John Lund, Dave Chisholm.
Okay, good. That's good. That's a solid 3. That's a good 3. I think everybody, when I've asked them, have always gone Stuart and John. Just me. That's kind of they are up there as the top drivers of all time.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the newer drivers would probably not remember Stuart. It'll be the dads that's talked about him. But you know, I thought his character and everything, and I wanted to aspire to be him. But I didn't win as many world finals as him.
No. Andrew Smith said it's all about world finals. That's what he always said. It's all about world finals.
Yeah.
So was there one particular reason you choosing to retire in 2009? And looking back, do you think it was the right time to do so?
Well, Jordan was 11-year-old and he wanted to race a go-kart. Or was he 10? I think it was 10 or 11. He wanted to race a go-kart. And at that time, likes of Bobby Griffin, Joe Booth and that, they were all racing minis. And I just felt that, you know, you have a 10-year-old kid racing a mini back then with them, and they were young men against little boys. And I thought, I mean, they have put bits of stuff in place so that they stay on inside and that, and they're on headsets now, which is a great thing. But I just thought that I didn't want them getting hurt, you know, and not wanting to do a sport because the older lads, you were in their way and they just demolish you to get round. So he wanted to go-karting. Some of his friends had done it, so we went and did that. So that's why I packed him, because I couldn't be in 2 places. Yeah. And then when Jordan became 16, he were on about wanting a Formula One. So we built a Formula One, and he raced that for a short while. Then he sold it, and you know, just had a couple of years off, and he's talking about maybe going in that car that Bob's been racing. So I don't want to put him under any pressure to do it. It's up to him whether he wants to do it, and I'll back him whether he does or he doesn't. You know, I don't want people saying it's my fault that he's doing this or my fault that I try not to be judgmental, but maybe I am. Maybe it's just a natural thing that you do. It's an hard one.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, we can't speak for Jordan, but obviously, you know, having your dad as Peter Falding is quite a challenge, I guess, at times, I suppose.
Yeah,
in terms of
a lot of people say that because he's got a lot to live up to, but I just think that if he comes 10th or 15th or wins, as long as he's tried his best. I mean, there was nobody, you know, one of my best moments with racing was when he won his heat at Skegness at UK Open. You know, my heart's never gone as fast, and like you like all them laps you count them down, it seemed like an eternity. You know, it's really a proud moment for seeing your son win a race, and I dare say all the other people, Mick and Mark Gilbank, you know, even Andrew with his daughters racing. You know, it must feel the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's real special moments.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately, the right decision to kind of, I guess, finish when you did, to concentrate on building, which is good.
Yeah. I think as well, it was getting to a point where it is expensive, and you're going out there for the wrong reason. You're going out there and just going out to make numbers up. And I love the sport, and that's one of the things with Bob. You know, we do the work and help him. You know, he's racing it, and you're still involved in it, and it's good to keep involved. And it's a sport that you love, like I say, and you're actually helping somebody. You know, you're going to be lost when you're just there as a fan doing nothing. You end up with for a drink.
And talking to Stuart about racing in New Zealand.
Yeah.
My last question. So, am I right in saying you're on 99 final wins? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, after this interview, somebody watches it and goes, right, Peter's on 99 final wins, and we're going to give him a fully funded 2021 drive, ultra competitive car to try and get that 100th final win. Would you do it?
So it's an hard question because, you know, it's as daft as it sounds, 2009 to now, it's 11 years since I raced. All right, I've had a couple of outings in Holland, but, you know, I don't think your body could take it. You know, you have a few beers and that, and you feel 21. But, you know, when I raced in Holland a few years ago, you know, I'm like wanting to pull off. I'm thinking it's got to have ended. It's got to have ended. And then you see 5 laps to go. And you see your lap times dropping off, and then you have a little spurt to end to try and get to end at race. You know, and it's hard. It's hard to just keep going for that length, for the distance. You know, you just think it'd be easy. It's 5 minutes. And you know, why can't you sit there and press a pedal for 5 minutes? But it's more draining than what people think.
Yeah.
Especially at our age. Well, my age.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm a youngster.
So I don't know. I mean, I have actually 100 finals. I just had one took off me.
Oh, okay. It wasn't my dad, was it?
No, I don't think it was. I failed on scales.
Oh, okay. So it's a possibility, but we're pretty much saying to all for that.
You never say never, but I mean, it would be nice to win 100 finals, but you know, that's what makes a sport unique, isn't it? That it's not a given. Just because you're going to spend a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to win anything. You know, in your time, you'll have seen people come, spend loads of money, buy all the best kit. 2 years' time, they've gone. Yeah, you know, made yellow, stroke blue sometimes. You know, that's what's so unique. I mean, what we've been going 65 years. How many world champions has there been? 30, 32, something like that.
Many, yeah.
You know, so when you look at it like that, it is a unique sport, and you've had some good drivers around that's dominated for short spells. You know, at minute it seems to be Tom can't do no wrong, but there's a few roundabout. Whether they'll give up or they'll try harder to beat him, I don't know. You know, that's where I like about Bob. Bob is wanting to do well, and I just see him that he's not scared of anything. If you do him, then he'll just bide his time and return it. You know, it's expected. If he's winning a race and he's between you and winning, he knows he's going to get one. You know, it's not personal, and he don't see it personal. He just wants to go and then have a drinking bar after and go home and do his talk next day. And if the car's wrecked, as you saw at Northampton at European weekend, I think it was, when he rolled it, you know, they went and worked through night to get back for Sunday. Yeah. You know, they're dedicated and they want to do well. So, you know, it's people like that the sport needs.
Yeah, and like I say,
and there's other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, like I say, you describe the beauty of stock car racing, isn't it? That you've got, if you're in the lead, you're going to get took out, and people want to see that. It's a great sport. It's a great sport.
Yeah, I think you've just not got to take it personal. You know, that's how the sport is, and you know, today it's a given for you, and tomorrow it's against you. You know, it's one of them sports that's why we have the fan base that we have, and they're all brilliant people, and they love it. You know, one of the things I've been fighting for as well is to try and keep the spectators allowed in the pits. You know, even with restrictions, I think that's still better than not at all. So hopefully everybody can try and do their bit to make pits a safer place, and long may it continue that we're allowed in there.
Brilliant. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
Well, no, it's just I'd like to just give me appreciation for the work that you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of work involved in all these sessions that you do. You're obviously interested, and Jordan is as well, that you're doing it. You're doing all the PR stuff at racing, and it's great. Without people like yourselves, you don't have to be a driver to be involved and be respected. You know, it's there's a lot of people round about that they don't necessarily feel as though they're getting respected, but they are in a different way.
Yeah.
And thank you to you lads for doing all this to keep all the fans entertained and happy.
Brilliant. Peter, thank you so much for your time. And hopefully we'll see you at a track very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.